Hey everyone, welcome back to Profiteers versus the People, the show where we debunk the PR of the famously wealthy. We're doing an episode on Martha Stewart today, and we aren't doing her whole life because she is surprisingly old. She's like 83.
Like, really old.
Strikingly old. Yeah, I didn't know she was that old. What are these people doing to take care of their skin?
Martha Stewart is like your friend's dog that's always been 3. Like, Martha Stewart has always been 70 since, like, 1998, and you're like, "Oh, shit, so she's, like, 85."
I always put her at just like an arbitrary my mom's age, but I guess she's like a lot older than my mom.
Yeah, she's old. She's an old gal.
She is adult grandchildren old.
She actually might be, like, great-grandchildren old.
And goddamn, does it take a while to navigate the life of a person who's been around for this long. We haven't actually really covered that many profiteers that have come, conquered, and died already. But when we have, it took a lot of research, a lot of, well, back then things were different, and a
Yeah.
lot of legacy inspection, which is fun up to a point, but it really isn't something we strive to feature prominently.
And with Martha, it's just not that interesting.
Yeah.
Like, she hasn't done that much that's overly interesting over the course of her life outside of the story that we're about to tell.
Yeah. Martha Stewart at this point is not dead. Let's go ahead and both find a little bit of wood to knock on here. Knock on that wood.
There's like not a 0% chance that we could release this episode and like within days or weeks we get the news that Martha Stewart died. And then we have to come to terms with the fact that we on Profiteers versus the People killed Martha Stewart because we didn't knock on enough wood.
Yep. Death by jinx. You hate to see it. So we've got a series coming up on the Cokes, and we're anticipating it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to be a long one. The Koch brothers are old and half dead at this point. So as a result, we're using this one as sort of just a touch, keep you guys in the loop, give you a fun story, and also buy us a little time, candidly, to really give you something fun to listen to on the Koch brothers. As a result, this one's going to be on the lighter side. We're going to tell the story about Martha Stewart's journey to prison.
Nice and light.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to keep the first part brief, but we do need to set the table a little bit so that you could understand the enormity of Martha Stewart in the period leading up to her stint in prison. Because, today she's kind of a lovable old lady, but at the time that our story takes place, she was queen bitch.
Yes, she was. We forget because she's sort of foundational to our media fabric. It's one of those, well, she's always been there, and a whole lot's been built on what she's built. Martha Stewart was huge.
Yes.
She began her career on Wall Street, which I didn't know until doing the base level research for this episode.
Or did I?
Yeah. She opened a restaurant before trying her hand at catering and later releasing a best-selling cookbook in 1982, which was just called Entertaining. God, it was so easy to name shit back then. IP was just basically free. I will say that. Like, that is one thing that the baby boomers and Gen X had a little bit easier than we have. I mean, if you could name our podcast in the 1980s intellectual property landscape, what name would you give it?
I'm going to be 100% real with you. I fucking love our name. I think
like
it's
our
sick.
name too.
It has
I think it
alliteration,
is.
and I would name it the exact same thing.
I love that.
I would. I have nothing else to add.
So, over the next 17 years, Martha Stewart became a household name and a massive standalone brand. In 1999, she took Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia public. And that's effectively her empire. Everything that she's built up to that point is encapsulated.
I mean, it has the word omnimedia in it. Like, that's the most foreboding corporate overarching name I could possibly think of. You know what? I take back my prior analysis. If we could name our podcast in the 80s, Omnimedia would be in the name.
Profiteers versus the People, Omnimedia.
Omnimedia.
This company would grow to reach 88 million people each month via its 3 owned magazines, 34 books, its cable and radio program, its website, which was a big thing back in 1999, and of course a catalog. Upon taking the company public, Martha Stewart became a billionaire.
With a B.
With a B. Now, $1 billion in 1999 might not sound like that much money, but we have to remember that was a long time ago. For some perspective, $1 billion in 1999 money is equivalent to $1.8 billion today.
That's a fucking ton of money.
Further, around this same time, Oprah was worth a plebeian $750 million. Everyone looks at Oprah as the big TV billionaire, but Martha was there first.
Dude, she walked so Oprah could run.
That's it, dude. To that point, she was apparently the first female billionaire in the United States. But
Crazy.
being that Martha Stewart had crested a $1 billion net worth in the 90s, it should come as no surprise that she would want her money to work for her. Any good business person knows how fleeting success can be. As such, she built up a decent sized investment portfolio outside of the shares she owned in her own company.
And this is important because the fact that she owned a company is going to come into play later in our story. But we are now in 2001, and Martha Stewart is currently perched on top of one of the most lucrative, multifaceted empires on the planet. She's
Mhm.
pretty much on every magazine's top blank list,
Oh, yeah.
and her estimated net worth is at this point $650 million, which is about $1.1 billion in 2023 dollars. Now, as you might have noticed, her status had slightly declined from its peak in the late 90s, but again, Martha Stewart is still a boss ass bitch. And as Rad Bill said, she had this very significant investment portfolio, which was managed by her broker, Peter Bukanovic. Now, Martha was invested in a wide variety of different securities, but the one that is most important to our story is a little company called Clone Systems that was headed by one of Martha's good personal friends, Sam Waxall. And I'm probably butchering your name too, Sam. Very sorry. So, to give some context to our lovely listeners, Clone was a hot new biotech company. And from a valuation perspective, they face many of the same challenges that firms in that sector often do. You see, firms like Imclone usually derive a ton of their future value from the development of a new drug. And while this isn't always the case, it's often an all or nothing proposition. Either the company will successfully develop and release a new drug and the stock will skyrocket, or they won't and the company will go under. Along the way, successes or failures in different trials or regulatory hoops will cause the value of the company to wildly fluctuate as the market tries to determine if whatever is happening is a good sign for final approval or a bad sign for final approval. Now, for Imclone, the magic drug in question was Erbitux, which was a revolutionary approach to treating colorectal cancer. However, on December 27th, 2001, our boy Sam got word that the FDA was going to refuse to review Erbitux.
The death blow.
Absolutely. This would prove absolutely devastating to Imclone's stock price. So he called his broker, our boy Peter, and instructed him to transfer $4.9 million in Imclone stock to his daughter, and then his daughter called and had Peter sell $2.5 million of those shares. Now, future investigations would prove that in the weeks prior, Imclone's VP, counsel, and four other executives also liquidated large stock positions in the company. And then, right after selling Waskell's daughter's shares, Peter called his gal, Martha Stewart, and her entire position was suddenly liquidated. I should note here, I'm
Yeah.
not sure if this is clear. Peter is both Martha's broker and Sam's broker. So that's where this connection comes.
Maybe this is a sign that the world needs more lawyers because as my my understanding is that he told Martha Stewart, "Hey, the CEO is dumping his shares," which in and of itself, I think that is insider trading.
This is a good question. So, SEC Rule 10b-5, quote, prohibits corporate officers and directors or other insider employees from using confidential corporate information to reap profit or avoid loss by trading in the company's stock. This rule also prohibits tipping of confidential corporate information to third parties. So, to answer your question, Basically, if you know something that's not public knowledge that could be reasonably expected to have a material effect on the price of a stock, and you either make a trade while in possession of that knowledge or pass along that knowledge to somebody else who affects a trade using that knowledge, everyone's committed a crime.
Yep.
Like a felonious crime. This is a textbook example of insider trading. And even more than that, it's a really fucking dumb example of insider trading.
Really dumb. I didn't speak up and when you were just talking earlier because there's so little that I can add. But it is funny to me that the CEO of this pharmaceutical company was like, I'll dodge the watchful eye of the SEC by giving the stock to my daughter and having her sell it. That seems stupid.
Literally the laziest white collar crime ever committed. Like,
Yeah.
he didn't even go outside the family. He was like, I mean, it's my daughter. No one's watching her. And as you might expect, they are.
Yeah, that's
So,
what's funny to me is Peter called Martha and was like, "Hey, I got knowledge of this crime and wanted to see if you wanted in on the crime."
absolutely. And, this next thing that I'm going to say is speculation and deserves a huge allegedly. But that either
Mhm.
means A, that everyone involved is like really stupid, or
Yeah.
B, they were doing this all the time and it was casual. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to lean one way or the other because there's a lot of stupidity all over this case.
Mhm.
But a reasonable person could look at this and say, "Oh, well, this was just common occurrence. That's why everyone was being so casual about it."
Yeah.
But anyway, so the SEC sees all of this and they come asking questions. And this is where Martha really fucked up.
Yeah.
She lied to the regulators and then she made public statements about her lies to the regulators, which
Yeah.
constitute a public false statement. So Martha said that she had placed a stop loss order on ImClone and the shares were automatically sold when the price went below the threshold that she set.
Mhm.
However, that's a pretty easy thing to verify. And when investigators interviewed a brokerage assistant that reported to Peter Bekanovic, the assistant sang like a fucking canary
Yeah.
and
Makes
said,
sense. That's most of these Wall Street types too. They always get portrayed as like gangsters in movies and stuff, but they always narc immediately.
"Oh, somebody narcs on everybody." And then they
Yeah.
end up just rolling on each other. And this is
Yeah.
pretty much what happened. So the assistant said, quote, "They did not truthfully reveal everything I knew about the actions of my immediate supervisor, who is Peter, and the true reason for the sales. And he also reportedly received money or other valuables for hiding his knowledge from investigators," which is just a weird little detail. It's like, "Hey man, if you lie to investigators, I'll give you a watch or something." It's like, maybe these are gangsters. I don't know, but
They're
so
trying to be.
so so then, like I said, Martha made public statements about why she sold ImClone,
Mhm.
which, according to the SEC, could be construed as having a positive effect on the price of Martha's company's stock, which is fraud. So
Yeah.
she could have fessed up and gotten fined by the SEC for insider trading if she just said, "Hey, yes, I did act on information when I got it." But instead, now she's being prosecuted for securities fraud and obstruction of justice for lying to the regulators. Now, before you wonderful listeners start thinking, "Well, damn, she just took the advice of her broker and sold the securities when he told her to. She shouldn't have gotten roped into this big scandal." What sealed Martha's fate was the testimony of a friend that she happened to be in her private jet with when all of this went down on December 27th. And that friend's name is Maria Pasternak. And Maria quoted Martha as saying, quote, "Isn't it nice to have brokers who will tell you these things?" Martha had been a stockbroker before. She knew
Yep.
exactly what she was doing. And again, it was blatantly, lazily illegal.
Yep.
And on top of this, and this last part is what really fucking gets me. Had Martha waited a day and sold her stock when the news about Erbitux not being reviewed was made public, she would have only made $48,000 less than she did by committing insider trading. So to put that in perspective, Martha Stewart was worth $650 million. That $48,000 was 0.0073% of her net worth. For the average American, whose net worth is actually a little over $1 million, that is the equivalent of committing like 4 felonies for like $78.
And what's so funny too is that the average American net worth is confounded by all of the wealth at the very top. So like
The
we're pro-
median net worth, which is like $192,000, it's even worse. It's like committing 4 felonies for like $14. It's literally going to jail over a fucking Big Mac. It's hilarious.
The stunningly ironic cherry on top of this irony cream pie is this. At the end of the day, Martha Stewart was not convicted of criminal insider trading. She didn't even go to jail for the $78 or $14 that she was asked if she took, according to our analysis just now. She was asked if she took it, and she was like, "What? No!" Although a civil case with the SEC would later require that she pony up $195,000, what sent Martha to jail was a criminal conviction of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and lying to federal investigators, all of which were especially bad for her brand, the saintly matriarch of daytime television. Insider trading is a bad look, but making up an easily disproved story to evade these charges really undermines that wholesome image on which the entire empire rested. And you mentioned something interesting earlier, which is because she was this massive figure, because her reputation could bear so much influence over the price of her own stock, there was a market manipulation allegation
Yep.
just in her saying, "I didn't do this,"
Yep.
which is crazy.
Because she publicly said that she didn't do this, and the way that she said it, she walked herself into much more serious charges.
Yeah. But overall, even if she'd been convicted of insider trading on its own, it would have been a lot easier to cry foul or just say that this was being unfairly treated under the circumstances that brought about the investigation in the first place. You can hear it in the actual incident that brought this whole thing about. It is a phone call she took and a "yeah, why not?" That
Yes,
is very easy to spin.
absolutely. Because
Yeah.
until she acted on that information, she really hadn't committed a crime. Peter had, her broker had. But had she said, fuck it, it's a couple $100,000, I'll just act on it when it becomes public. I appreciate the heads up.
Yeah.
This story doesn't exist. But
Yeah.
because she's like, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah.
Felonies.
Boom, felony. And even so, if she'd done it and then once it became public, she was like, wait a minute, I had no idea that was illegal, she would still get the "you were a fucking stockbroker,
Yep.
dude"
Yep.
treatment from plenty. But for a lot of her fan base, they would decry this decision to charge her or to pursue charges. And in the end, she would walk.
Yeah. If she didn't walk, she'd be
She'd
fined.
be fine.
She'd be fined. Her broker would probably get barred from the industry. But really, for someone in her position, the consequences would be the equivalent of a speeding ticket, if
Yeah.
that. But she lied. She kept lying over and over again. And she went to jail.
Yep, for her conniving, Martha Stewart was sentenced to 5 months in minimum security prison, 5 months on house arrest thereafter, and then 2 years probation. During her time in prison, Martha maintained her innocence and likened her incarceration to that of Nelson Mandela, who similarly
Oh,
spent 24 years in a series of maximum
Jesus.
security prisons for opposing racist policies backed by the CIA. She gestured that he too was a good person who had gone to jail Let's not read into that any further.
Yeah, I don't think we can, dude. We don't have time. This is supposed to be a short episode.
Yeah, there's a lot to look at there. She also made a bitchin' nativity scene while locked up. There's like a camel, and it's like these little ceramics. They're freaking beautiful. And we're not going to tell you where to get them because Martha ain't an advertiser on here. Tough shit, Martha. You gotta pay the piper.
Show me the money, Martha. Show me the money.
Show me the money. Upon her release, Martha snapped into action. Her company's shares traded at 4 times their value at the time of her incarceration, which was not anywhere near a full recovery, but it is still a nice boost. It was clear at this point that some pretty incredible damage had been done to her organization. In the end, the story that unfolded was this. In the pursuit of an additional $45,000 gain, Martha sacrificed $150 million of her own net worth. So, some questions on our girl Martha. Money Mike, do you feel like Martha Stewart was unfairly treated?
Oh, no.
Yeah,
No.
no.
If Martha Stewart was anyone who knew anything, she would have gotten the same treatment. We've beaten this horse to death, but just to kick it again, her end result was because she lied. That's why she got where she went. She could have just been honest up front, and none of this would have happened.
Yeah, the charges were a la carte. The sentencing was a la carte. Everything seemed pretty fair here. Follow-up question. Do you feel like her punishment might have been intended, at least in part, as a deterrent for other potential offenders?
Here's the thing.
Yes.
No.
No.
So, when you look at the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did Martha Stewart lose? 5 months of her life and some money. That
Yep.
sucks. I mean, really, that is not something that I want to lose. But she popped out of jail more or less in the same economic position that she was in before. Now, we
Yeah.
didn't do research on this, but what did Peter lose? And again, Peter did something illegal for sure. I'm not saying that he is a victim in all of this. But Peter, I looked it up, he got barred from the securities industry, so he lost out on the way that he could make money.
Yep.
He also faced charges. I don't remember if he went to jail or not. But I say all that to say, other parties in this story came out way worse than Martha did for doing the same thing. So I feel like if another person in Martha's position is looking at what happened to Martha and how she made all of the wrong choices, I mean, really, like, short of like hitting someone with her car on the way to the courthouse, she fucked this case up as much as she possibly could.
Yeah. Yep.
And
She didn't murder anyone. We can give her that. But
yeah,
otherwise, she really could not have made a bigger mess out of this whole thing.
and still, she is doing just fine.
Yeah,
You know,
she's going to be okay. I mean, you look at a $150 million deduction from a person's net worth, and in that soundbite, that is incomprehensible. It is so much money. But to Martha Stewart, I mean, you run out of things to buy eventually, I feel like. What difference does that 150 million make? She's still well in the territory of buying whatever kind of boat, whatever kind of helicopter. She had a private jet. She'll be fine.
yeah, yeah. All of this happened from the comfort of Martha's private jet. Like,
Yeah.
she's okay.
She's gonna pull through for those of you who are still fans of Martha. Okay, so we're gonna skip the crutches for this one. Please tune in for our next series. It's going to be on the Koch brothers, unless it turns out that they're super friggin' boring, which I kind of doubt. But if that winds up being the case, we'll let you know who we're covering next.
Yeah, we really want to kind of go fearlessly into the breach of profiteers in politics.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to keep it as apolitical as possible. But I think there's going to be a lot of juice there and insight into how things are the way they are.
Yeah. Which demands some analysis for sure.
For sure.
Check out our Twitter, drop us an email. Our email address is in the down there thingy, or check us out on Reddit. Our Reddit thingy is in the down there thingy as well. Love you all. Thanks.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.